Ciao.
We have a plan to halve the cost per kilowatt hour. And we're going to go through that plan with you today, step by step.
We still have to record, so.
Yeah, we do.
Not have to, but get to. Did I say have to record, Mike? I meant get to. Mike LaPlante is here with us, everyone. Mike LaPlante, the Average Wine Enthusiast.
That's me.
That's him. You can find that on YouTube. And, of course, if you want to find him on Twitter, you go to Average... No, you don't. You go to Easy... No, you don't. What do you go to on Twitter, Mike?
I am at Lippo.
At Lippo. That's two P's. L-A-P-P-O.
Yes, I've had that.
I said P-P.
Oh, no.
Sorry about that.
My Average Wine Enthusiast guy, he is also on Twitter, but I realize that the demographics for posting stuff on Twitter about wine is... Geeks don't tend to be all that big on wine for some reason.
Really? Well...
Yeah, well, that's what I'm finding anyway.
Aren't geeks big on whatever geeks are big on? I mean, that's the thing. Like, you and I both know a geek who got into bourbon. I think he got into bourbon actually because you and I were talking about bourbon a lot. You know who I'm talking about?
Barry Falk?
No. Although Barry's a good one too. No, our friend Charles. Our friend Charles.
Oh.
Like I showed up to Macstock one time, and he had a bottle of bourbon for me, which was very nice of him. And I was like, I didn't know you knew about bourbon. He's like, well, I didn't really, but you and Mike were talking about it, and then all of a sudden he's telling me all this stuff about bourbon that I had no idea about because I hadn't really studied bourbon, like how it's made, how it's well, I was going to throw out a bourbon making term, but again, I've never really studied bourbon. He, on the other hand, was telling me all this stuff. Like we were talking about Jefferson's Ocean. Do you know this one?
That rings a bell. Continue.
Yeah. So it's a kind of bourbon that is aged in barrels on a ship at sea. So you get, sort of the sea air, but you also get the constant motion of the ship, which is not going to be like constant motion, like, you're always in like, it's not the perfect storm. But I mean, it's not just sitting still, right? And he was actually fascinated by the possibility of how that would change I keep wanting to say
process.
Aging. Thank you, because I kept wanting to say fermentation. I'm like, I know that's not right. He was curious how that would change the aging process. I've since, by the way, tried a glass of the Jefferson's Ocean. It's fine. I mean, I think you're really paying because you're like, because it was aged at sea. I mean, I think you're really paying for the novelty of it. I did not enjoy that particular glass, but of course I know with a lot of bourbons. My point, Mike, is geeks are geeks about what they're geeks about. So probably you just haven't found the geeks who are also into wine, because as bored as people were by that minute and a half that I just did, there's probably at least one or two people out there who are like, oh, that's very interesting. And they'd be the same for your show. So
I have to ask you a question, Ken. How do you feel about the aspect of you actually affecting people in that way, that you brought something up, you turned them on to something, and then they become an enthusiast, as it were, of bourbon in this case?
Fine, I guess. I don't know.
You could die tomorrow and you should be a happy man.
Oh, okay. Well, thanks. I mean, that happens to all of us, though, doesn't it? I mean, that happens to everybody. The difference is, like, when you've got a few thousand people listening to your show and you say something, there's a greater chance that somebody's going to twig a thing that you've said. Or when I have a few thousand people listening to my show and I say something, there's a chance that that's going to, light a spark with somebody. But, I mean, it happens with everybody. There are tons of things that just come up in conversation that suddenly you become that, more interested in that thing. It's just a question of, are you talking to 5 people a week or 500 people a week? Right?
Right.
I guess. Yeah. Allison Sheridan actually asked me a similar question the other day. She's like, sometimes I feel bad that we're encouraging people to buy Apple stuff. And I'm like, I don't really think I'm encouraging people to buy Apple stuff. I think we're just talking about the stuff that interests us. Mm-hmm. And if that becomes an interest to someone as well, then great. Hey, so this is kind of weird, actually. So for today's show, because you and I have worked together off and on for a number of years, but you've never been on this show. And so there are questions that I ask people the first time they're on this show, except I almost feel like you answered today's question with Monday's episode, but this question is coming, so I'm curious what your answer is going to be. One of the things I like to do the first time somebody is on is talk to them about near future tech that turns them on. We have had answers about... What have we had answers about? Dave Hamilton is very excited about the prevalence of Wi-Fi 6. He thinks the next year is going to be the year for Wi-Fi 6. And, that's actually starting to be borne out because I'm noticing more and more companies are now promoting the fact that they have Wi-Fi 6. They're not promoting what it is. They're not promoting why you should care, but they're saying Wi-Fi 6 is a buzzword more now. And I'm honestly having trouble remembering what anybody else said because I'm so excited about what you're going to say. What near future tech turned you on, Mike?
I think what I talked about on Monday was more near future type stuff, whereas this is new tech.
Okay.
More in that vein.
Okay.
Are you familiar with Battery Day?
No.
Yeah. Okay. What Tesla does, the company Tesla, they have a shareholders meeting, and at that shareholders meeting, they have what they call Battery Day, and it's kind of like their keynote. Basically, this is what our plan is for the next year, the next 5 years, whatever, and so on. So I just recently have been getting, interested in Tesla and maybe even Elon Musk as well, as far as his impact on humanity, I guess you'd say, and how he's going to be remembered in the future. Is he going to be something like a Tesla, which he was an important man in the field of electricity. But as far as this Battery Day goes, basically what they're going to do is they're going to change the design of batteries so that they're going to scrap basically everything that they know today. The way they're building cars today, or not building cars, I shouldn't say, the way they're building the batteries is going to be totally different down the road, which, working for an automotive company, that is not the way to do it. Usually you build on what you know, and then you keep that, whether it's intellectual property or this piece of, intellectual or proprietary machinery you have or whatever, and you build on that success if it was successful. But that's not what they're doing. They're scrapping it because they have goals that they know that they can't reach using the current way that they build the batteries. So what they want to do is build machines. So their priority is to build a machine that builds the batteries. So their priority right now is to build the machine, not necessarily the batteries. They have the concept of how it should be done. It works great on paper or in computer models or whatever, but they want to build the machine. And so this all really fascinates me because there has really been no other company that is like Tesla. Like, the automotive industry is about 100 years old right now. And basically at the beginning of it, there was a whole bunch of car companies that were out there. But as time went on, they, like everything in the telecoms and other industries, they started amalgamating, and then there turned out to be the big three. And that went on for decades. And there was no new car company to come out. And when I think of the car industry, I think of it as something that really defined the United States and North America as a whole, really, because it created a middle class, this sort of industrial uprising, creating cars, and now we got to build roads, and it just kept going on and on and on. So the fact that this very important industry never really was infiltrated by a new car company again, because it was such a big undertaking. And the fact that we're seeing this happen right now is really fascinating to me. And to listen to Elon Musk on Battery Day, he's not necessarily an eloquent speaker out in public, but he can talk on a one-to-one basis. So listening to him and just the amount of intelligent thoughts that he has blows my mind. And just the amount of I want to say panache, but that's not the right word. Just cojones, like, he's just got the guts to go ahead and do this because he feels that this is the right thing to do to move forward.
Let me ask you a couple of questions really quickly. I want to go two directions. Remind me to come back to the battery part. Okay. If I say to you, John DeLorean, and then I say Heinrich Fisker, what are your thoughts? They tried to do things in cars, but they were never going to be sort of like family sedan, which seems to me to be one of the big revolutions that Tesla has. Is they're not trying to do something for car enthusiasts. They're not trying to do, if the world ran properly, this is what cars would be like. They were trying to do I mean, they were doing well. I don't know if I say those two names to you, what do you say?
Well, I think they try to be like Elon Musk.
You think so? No, I mean, like Fisker was never going to put one of his cars in every garage. I mean, they're beautiful cars, and if you see one driving, you can't help but look.
But why don't you think he wanted to put one of his cars in every garage?
Well, I think because that never seemed to be his emphasis. That never seemed to be.
Well, you can't start.
It felt refined. It felt like this was for the gentleman. Well, I was going to say the gentleman's gentleman, but that's the butler. So it felt like it was the Fisker felt like it was for millionaires, basically. And I didn't see him, one day saying, and it'll be great when you can put two, car seats in the back for the kids. I mean, it always felt like it was going to be, I'm on my way to a wine tasting car.
Well, I think that's where they all start. Like what the first Tesla was, at least 150 grand, wasn't it?
I don't know.
It was
I wasn't in the market at the time. I was saving up for my Fisker.
Yeah, I think that's where they all got to start. Whatever they create, it's going to be a lot of money. And it's not for the everyday guy. It's for the millionaires, basically.
Right.
Those are the people who are going to buy the first generation of these cars. And I think if DeLorean's car, which had a lot of good ideas in it, those ideas could easily, it's all a thing about scaling, so if you can make 1 million of these things, you can bring the cost down. And if you can do that, you can make it so that everybody can afford one. And then obviously the design of the DeLorean was not for everybody.
Yeah.
But, there's a lot of ideas that in there, the stainless steel being one of them.
Yeah.
I could see him, eventually making a hemp car, which Henry Ford did, just different materials other than steel to make your car.
The biggest problem with DeLorean, of course, was the accidental time travel.
Yeah.
All right, I got another question really quickly. I want to go back to Battery Day because we're coming close to the end of this show, this episode rather. But what's the deal with the battery? I mean, is Battery Day just thinking new about new things, or is there something special about this particular battery that he's building this machine for?
No, I don't think. I think Battery Day is just the thing that they call it. Whether it's actually talking about batteries, which in this case they were, and I think they talked about other stuff. A lot of it went over my head because it's wicked technical stuff. So what was your question? I'm sorry.
My question was, are you most excited? Is it just the thinking about new ways of doing old things that excites you, or is it this particular battery that turns you on?
Oh, no, the particular battery doesn't turn me on. They call it the biscuit tin battery because it's cylindrical. So obviously it's not as space saving as other, rectangular boxy type batteries. But the amount of kilowatt hours, that's their goal to get the best kilowatt hours out of the battery. I guess this concept, the running in a circle kind of thing, the no use of a positive and negative, not posts, but terminals. They get rid of those as well. So there's all the connections are without that, and it speeds things up. And so the battery is not the thing that excites me really. It's the fact that they're throwing away the existing way that they make batteries today. The Tesla you buy today will not have the same battery as it will, 3 years down the road, I'm going to guess. He has really tight timelines, Elon Musk. And I was actually just watching something with Kara Swisher and who's the other guy who's doing the TED Talks in the red chairs? What's that guy's name? He's a writer for a newspaper. Anyway.
Well, it used to be Walt Mossberg.
Yeah, Walt Mossberg. Yeah. Elon was talking to those guys about a dozen years ago, and the stuff that he was thinking of and the timeline, back then, if you were thought of doing all the stuff that he thought he could do, and he was talking mostly about the SpaceX stuff, you would say you're crazy. You have way too lofty of goals. But sure enough, he's landing rockets back on ships in the middle of the ocean.
In fairness, that doesn't mean he's not crazy.